Hi folks, this is the demo for Rhythm and Line. I will take you through different elements of the sketchbook work for Rhythm and Line. So we're going to start with the first part of your sketchbook work, which is the rhythm exercise. And this is really an opportunity to kind of get out of that thinking brain. You know, we've talked a lot this semester about thinking, looking, and doing. And this is really kind of shutting off that thinking brain and really getting into the doing. And so if we think back to suprematism, which was really focused on feeling and shape and form and how this kind of feeling or how geometric shapes or form can really evoke a feeling in the viewer and evoke a feeling in the artist. And so we're really going to kind of shut off our thinking brain for this exercise and really tap into the feeling brain and that kind of process of transposing that onto your paper. This is also a really good exercise to kind of reset. So if you're feeling stuck or have a mental block, this is a really good opportunity to just kind of calm that part of the brain function and just respond to what you're hearing, what you're seeing. And so the first part of this exercise is going to be to create a background. And your background is utilizing color. And for this, we're going to be thinking about non-representational abstract work, right? So we're just thinking about color and shape and the movement of the color on the page. So we're not going to use underdrawing. We're not going to use any hard lines. We're going to focus on movement and flow of the color medium that you choose. And the goal in this part is to represent the feeling of the song in your perspective in color and in how that color moves across the page and how you move that color across the page. So you're capturing the feeling in this first part. What do the sounds feel like, right? Not what do the sounds sound like, but what do the sounds feel like? I think in a lot of music, especially if there's vocals, there are some cues that will trigger some colors. You know, for instance, the song I'm going to do is called Song for Zulu by Phosphorescent, and it references fire a lot, right? So our thinking brain is fire, red, orange, yellow, right? But that might not necessarily be the feeling that you get when you hear the music, right? So I want you to really think about that feeling. What does that, close your eyes, think about what does that song feel like, right? We also learned about synesthesia, right? Which is when there's a trait that some people have that the senses kind of overlap. So when you hear something, you have a taste in your mouth, or when you hear something, you think colors, right? So that's kind of what we're triggering, right? It's going to be a little bit challenging because we live in a very literal world. We live in a very analytical world, and we need that, right? For functionality, for safety, for work, right? We have to be in that part of our brain. But we're really going to shift into a different part of our brain to accomplish this. So that's one, right? Color. What does the song feel like? What is the feeling that you have? And when you have that feeling, what is the color that represents that? That's going to be your background. And you're open to all color medium except colored pencil, right? I want us to avoid colored pencil. I want us to use something that's a little bit more broad, that has the opportunity to create a little bit more volume, a little bit more movement and flow on the page. And so we're going to not use colored pencil, but any other medium is fine. Watercolor, gouache, oil pastels, oil paint sticks, chalk pastels, crayon, anything that gives you kind of a broad stroke will work for the first part. So that's the first part. And then the second part, we will be using shape. So this is, we're going back to kind of that cut work. And we're going to, again, use either geometric or abstract shape, so non-representational and not even objective abstract, right? We're not trying to reference any identifiable shape. And this is going to be what the music sounds like. What does it look like? What does that sound look like, right? So, and again, there are going to be songs that give kind of verbal cues that are going to trigger a shape in your brain, right? Fire, I can think of that, upside down tear shape with a jagged edge, or not upside down, but a tear shape with that jagged edge that, oh, that's fire. That's the shape for fire. But that is the thinking brain again, right? So we're going to think about for the second part, what does that sound look like, right? Not what shape represents that sound, right? Because then we could think teardrop, sadness, right? There's a connection there. But what does that sound look like? If we're just closing our eyes and thinking about sound, the sound you're hearing, what does that look like? That's going to be your foreground, right? So you identify those shapes, you cut them out, and then you place those shapes on top of your background. And when you do this, I really want you to think about the relationship between the background and the foreground and create a connection between the two so that there is some type of exchange that's happening between the background and the foreground. And think about the placement, right? We're going back to placement. Think about the use of repetition or flow, right? We're going back to a lot of those different design principles. And, we can think about sequential growth or sequential progression. We can have more of a radial design. You could have an all over patterning. Whatever represents that sound visually is what you're going for. So you can have a progression from decreased sizes to increasing size or vice versa, whatever matches that visual representation of sound for you. So that's going to be what completes this part of your exercise and connects that background that you're doing first to the foreground that you're doing second. So that's part one. And for part one, again, my song is Song for Zulu by Phosphorescent. And the medium I'm going to be using is a combination of gouache and watercolor. So what I want you to do, once you have your station set up, once you have your medium selected, I want you to listen to your song one way all the way through, one time all the way through. And when you're listening, I want you to think about color. And I want you to think about the color that you feel when you're hearing that song. And then I want you to pick those colors out. So that's going to be your color palette, right? So that gives you a little bit more control over what the design is going to look like, even though it's abstracted. So pick a certain set of colors that you feel like when you hear that music, when you're listening to it, those are the colors that you feel, right? So that's the feeling of the song. So I picked Song for Zulu, and the colors that I was feeling was greens, blues, a little bit of reds, and yellows. So that was primarily the color palette that I'm going to be going with. I'm not sure what it's going to look like because it is based on feeling. So I have no plan of what the composition is going to look like. I'm just going to go with the flow. Little silly dad joke there for everyone. And I just have a few different shades of blue that I'm going to start with, cobalt and ultramarine. I have a brilliant red and a crimson, kind of burnt sienna in the red family. I have emerald and Viridian green, a lemon yellow, and then a basic black and white for blending. So that's going to be my color palette based on the song and how the song how I was feeling the music sounded like. So that's going to be my color palette, and I am going to go ahead and get started. And so again, listen to that song, listen to whatever your song is one time all the way through, really kind of closing your eyes, getting a feeling for what that sound looks like. What color represents that sound, right? And when we watched that TED Talk about the man who used technology to be able to see color, right? And based on the different tones that he was hearing, right? Or not see color, but hear color, right? So we're thinking in that way. We're hearing the color of the different tones and notes in the song and in the music. And also with, folks who are listening to songs with vocals, right? The message also evokes certain feelings. And so that's going to represent a different color as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started.
say love is a burning thing, that it makes the fiery ring. Oh, but I know love as a fading thing, just as fickle as a feather in a stream. See, honey, I saw love. You see, it came to me. It put its face up to my face so I could see. Yeah, then I saw love disfigure me into something I am not recognizing. Cage it called. I said, come on in. I will not open myself up this way again. Now lay my face to the soil, nor my teeth to the sand. I will not lay like this for days now upon end. You will not see me fall, nor see me struggle to stand, to be acknowledged by some touch from his gnarled hand. You see the cage it called, honey. I said, come on in. I will not open myself up this way again. You see the moon is bright in that treetop night. I see the shadows that we cast in the cold, clean light. And my feet are gold and my heart is white, and we race out on the desert plains all night. See, honey, I am not some broken thing. I do not lay here in the dark waiting for thee. No, my heart is gold and my feet are light, and I am racing out on the desert.
Okay, so we are back for part 2 of the rhythm exercise. So I went ahead and I let the first part dry because my medium was wet and it needed to dry before I moved on. So here is the finished part 1 of the feeling of the music. And you know, in the assignment sheet, it says that you might have to do a few tries to get it right, and I definitely did. It took me about 3 tries before I started to really get in the rhythm of it and have a good relationship to the color that I was using and to the interpretation of feeling. And you'll see that I started my color palette with blues, greens, and reds, and I really just used the blues and the reds with some white in there. And that's really ultimately what started to feel right when I was listening to the song. And so the second part, I'm going to be incorporating shape. And remember, we don't want it to be referential in any way. So completely abstracted, completely geometric shapes that aren't referencing any type of specific object. So even something like a teardrop is too referential, right? We want to keep it geometric, loose, non-referential, non-representational. So I am going to go with just white, plain white paper. You can use colored paper or black paper if it relates to your music, to what the color, what the sound looks like to you, what shape the sound is embodying. If color is important for that, that's fine. If not, you don't need that. I'm just going with white. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with cutting up my paper. to create the foreground, right? And remember, we want a relationship between the foreground and the background. So we're not just going to cut shapes and then stick them haphazardly. We're really going to think about creating a relationship between the different elements of composition you created and the shapes that you're going to use for this part.
It makes the fiery ring. Oh, but I know love as a fading thing, just as fickle as a feather in a stream. See, honey, I saw love. You see, it came to me. It put its face up to my face so I could see. Yeah, then I saw love disfigure me into something I am not recognizing. You see the cage it called. I said, come on in. I will not open myself up this way again. Now lay my face to the soul.
The next couple of sketchbook work exercises we're going to do are focused on drawing. So the first is just going to be a really quick kind of point of motion exercise, and then we're going to do a blind contour continuous line drawing. So for the point of motion, I want you to set a timer just like you will with the contour drawing. And we're going to go through and just do some mark making. So really simple, really basic mark making. And we're going to use the different points of motion in our arm that we use for drawing. And so we're going to talk about 4 main points of motion today: fingertips, wrist, elbow, and shoulder, right? And so these are the different points of motion that we use for drawing. You can also use your whole body, but we'll just do those 4 today. So I'm going to take you through some timed exercises, and I'm going to have you time yourself, and you're going to do each one for 2 minutes. So really quick, 2-minute point of motion drawing, and we're just going to do mark making. So whatever kind of marks you can make with those limited points of motion. And what you'll notice is that if you're using the fingertips, those marks are very short and very quick. When you use your wrist, those are kind of more mid-length, still on the short side, but a little bit more range of motion in your wrist than your fingertips. Elbow, definitely longer, kind of solid lines. And then if you're moving from your shoulder, you can get a lot of long curvilinear movement. So different range of motion is going to impact the type of control we have over our drawing medium. And this is a fun little exercise you could do if you need to kind of take a mental break, take a brain break of what you're working on. We'll start with the points of motion. So I'm going to have you set your timer for 2 minutes, and you can use a pen or pencil, whatever you'd like for this one. And I will take you through this timed exercise. Okay, so set your timer for 2 minutes. And we're just going to start this first exercise. So this is all about control with your fingertips. So the only thing you're moving are your fingertips. You're not moving at the wrist, just the fingertips. So set your timer for 2 minutes, and for 2 minutes, isolate your movement to your fingertips. And go. Okay, so you'll notice that your range of motion was a lot shorter. It was a lot crisper. You weren't able to make long motions, right? We were limited by the range of our fingertips. Okay, so for this next 2-minute exercise, I want you to spend 2 minutes, and this time that range of motion is going to include the wrist. So set your timer for 2 more minutes, and 2 minutes starts now. When you move at the wrist, those lines get a little bit longer, from the shorter lines that we did when we were just doing fingertips to longer range of motion, right? We have more flexibility in what we can do. So for the next 2 minutes, you're going to increase that range of motion to the elbow. So set your timer for 2 minutes and see what flexibility you have. How long can you make that line or any other type of shape that you're creating when you increase that range of motion to the elbow. And 2 minutes starts now. All right, great. So now you're going to set your timer for 2 more minutes. This is the final exercise. And this time we're including the range of motion to include fingertips, wrist, elbow, and this time shoulder. So now think about that range of motion. Think about how long you can make that line, what kind of shape and flow you can use. So full range of motion, shoulder, elbow, wrist, fingertip. Start now, 2 minutes. Okay, great. So now that you are loosened up, we are going to move into the blind contour. So you should have noticed that with the range of motion exercise, that was a really quick example, just loose mark making, kind of shaking up and warming up your drawing muscles. If you are someone who draws quite frequently, you'll notice that you get a lot of tension in your shoulders, and there's some really good stretches that you can do to help with that. Putting your arms out straight in front and really stretching those trapezius muscles will really help. But warming up that range of motion and really examining what kind of movement you're getting. If you're someone that's always very, very tight and closed with your mark making, you might be having really small, short, rigid movements. But when you get your full range of motion, it gives you a lot more flexibility. So for blind contour, this is going to be a 10-minute exercise. And this is a blind contour continuous line. And many of you have already done this or have done this several times. It's a really good exercise to do if you're ever in a kind of like creative block or just need a little break from the day. It's also really good to start training your eye and training your drawing from observation. And so we're really practicing looking here. And so what you're going to do, again, you have your timer set for 10 minutes. You are going to only look at the object that you are drawing. So you are looking at the shoe and your paper is off to the side so that you are not looking at your paper at all. If you feel like just instinctually or you feel the pressure to look, take another piece of paper and cover it so that you're really, really not looking. And the idea with blind contour, it's just an exercise. You'll see in the assignment sheet, it looks like a really good representation of the shoe for a blind contour. And that's not going to happen right away. But you're really basically training yourself to look differently when you're drawing, right? Often, a lot of drawing mistakes when we're drawing from life comes from drawing what we think something should look like versus what we see. And so this is an exercise of really looking and having your tool, whether it's a pen or pencil, have that be an extension of your eye. So this becomes an extension of your vision, right? So the idea is, as you visually trace the lines, trace the contour of the lines of the shoe, your hand, your fingers, your pencil tip or pen tip is following and tracing along what you're seeing, right? So that path, creates a connection between what you're seeing and what you're drawing. And as your eye moves right around the shape of that shoe, so does your pencil, right? So there becomes a connection. The more you do this, interestingly, the more accurate those blind contour drawings will be. So we're going to do this for 10 minutes. I'm going to do it along with you. I will speed up the demo, but I will set my timer for 10 minutes. I'm going to do a blind contour of a shoe, and we'll see how it turns out. Here you can see my 10-minute blind contour drawing, which you can start to see the shape of the boot come out. Here's my boot. This is what I was looking at. You know, a few more tries, it might be a little bit more consistent. You can start to see that shape of the boot coming out here, where the tabs are up here, right? So 10-minute blind contour, really tracing those lines with the eye and replicating it. And with this, remember, do not, once you make contact to that paper, do not remove your pen or pencil. It stays connected in one continuous line. Okay, so that is the blind contour. So those are the two drawing exercises I wanted to go through with you today. The point of motion, fingertip, wrist, elbow, shoulder, and the blind contour. So the next thing we're going to do is the contour line drawing of something from life. So if you have a person at your disposal, it's preferred that you do a contour drawing of their face. And there is a facial proportion handout in Blackboard. And if you are doing a face, I want you to outline that face and then go back in. First do a contour drawing, right? So hard lines, no sketchy back and forth, solid line drawing of the face, just the hard lines that you see of the face, and then go back in with hatching or cross hatching to create more value, to create more dimension. If you're doing an object, same thing. Contour line drawing, outlining the shape, outlining the form, any hard lines you see, going back in with hatching and cross hatching to add some volume and dimension. Okay, so we're back to do a contour line drawing of an object. If you have a face, preferably a face. And remember, you're going to be studying this object and looking for the hard lines. That is what you were drawing, and then we're going to go back in with hatching and cross hatching to add value. I don't have access to a person, so I am going to be doing a shoe. This is the shoe I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to do a contour of that shoe. So I'm going to set it up here. Okay. So again, using a pen or pencil, hard outline, the shape, the form. Let's try not to do the kind of sketchy back and forth line, right? Let's try to have more of a solid line, right? Relying on that wrist motion, using that elbow to create more of an elongated line. And try to go slow with this. Take your time. Consider this kind of part of that like meditative process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And again, when you do this, this pencil, your fingertips, becomes an extension of your eye. So as you visually trace, you are mirroring that with your pencil. But in this exercise, you can take your pencil or pen up and off the paper. You can look back and forth between your drawing and the object. Okay, so I have my base contour line drawing complete of the Dansko. You can see I did not get my placement correct on my sheet of paper, so the tip of my shoe breaks the picture plane a little bit, but step one, complete contour line drawing of an object from life. So part two is to go in with hatching or cross hatching to add some value, right? So hatch marks, lines that are placed in close proximity to each other. Hatch marks is when we overlap those lines with lines going in a different direction, right? Your value changes based on how many of these lines overlap, how close they are together, right? So hatching or cross hatching, whatever you'd like to do to add some value and some depth. And you can use pen or pencil. And I'm going to keep mine simple for the sake of this exercise, but you can be as detailed, as specific as you would like for this exercise. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And always, always be looking at your reference. When we stop looking at the reference and start making it up as we go, that's when we really start to lose the likeness. If we think back to point of motion with this, I'm really just using my fingertips, a little bit of my wrists. Okay, so there is your basic exercise on contour line, filling in with hatching and cross hatching. So if you have any questions about that or any of the other exercises, please reach out via email and I will be happy to work with you one-on-one. Have a really great day and be safe out there.